It's another version of the pick six, and much like the Packers offense, Brendan Dworzynski's computer is broken. We're going to try and fix that, and we're going to try and fix the Packers offense at the same time. Let's see what happens. Let's get it rolling. Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of the Pick Six. I am Jacob Westendorf. I am normally joined by a much skinnier and smaller and wearer of jorts, Brendan Dworzynski. But as I mentioned at the top of the show, Brendan's computer, much like Green Bay's offense, is broken. Can't quite figure out what's going on. He can't hear me. So let's just say that is probably a blessing for him and in his life for anything like that. Iowa Joe is with me here in the Game On Wisconsin YouTube chat. I think you go to Kinnick Stadium for that, Iowa. Congratulations to the Hawkeyes on a big win over Luke Fickell's Wisconsin Badgers. Maybe now Luke Fickell will take Bo Schembechler's word off of the back of his vest because he's a phony fraud. I'm still pissed about that. But let's move on from that. It's a big week this week for the Green Bay Packers. It's a huge week in college football. If you guys are fans of college football, Alabama and Tennessee, Penn State and Ohio State. I know Michigan plays Michigan State. That's not that big of a deal unless you're me from a rankings and matchup standpoint, but it should be a lot of fun to get those things going. And then the Packers will play on Sunday, hoping to get back on the right track after what can really only be described as an embarrassing loss. Certainly the worst of the season through the first 5 games, and we got a long way to go before anything like that can move on. But it's got to get better than that. I mean, if they can't get moving against the Broncos, then I don't know who they're going to be moving against from an offensive standpoint. The Broncos are historically, and I'm not using that word in jest, historically bad on the defensive side of the ball. And Joe, I don't have a good answer for that question. I know Eric Hall had some injuries before he came to Iowa, but yeah, did they say it was, let me know, was it an ACL for Cade? I didn't know, but for the Packers offense, a little bit of news today, maybe a boost in the backfield. Rockford, Illinois native James Robinson signed with the Green Bay Packers onto the practice squad today. We'll see what that means as far as a role, if anything. Practice squad can mean here today, gone tomorrow, quite literally. You're pretty much an expendable piece at that point, as Kurt Benkert might be able to whine about at a different day. But I agree, Jay. This might be a telling game for what the Packers are. Do they really suck? Because if they lose to this Broncos team, I think the answer is unequivocally yes. And that's probably a little sobering. I think even the optimist of optimists, of course, thought the Packers had a chance to, make some noise and get in the playoffs. I think by this point in the year, we have figured out that Green Bay is not as good as Detroit, and they've got a ways to go. Detroit right now has an argument as best team in the NFC. To me, it's at the beginning of the year, we came into the year thinking San Francisco, Philly, and Dallas. And I think for now, you could pretty safely say it's San Francisco, Philly, and Detroit. You could pick your flavor on anything like that. I think that back to the point I was making with James Robinson, a couple things for him. A former 1,000-yard rusher, had a big year as an undrafted free agent for the Jacksonville Jaguars, was then eventually released. After the new coach came in, they drafted Travis Etienne, all that good stuff too over there. I have seen James Robinson play in person. I saw him in high school, and he is the best high school football player I've ever seen, bar none. And it was like watching 2 completely different speeds on the field when he was out there. Obviously not going to be the case coming to Green Bay. He may not make an impact on the offense at all, but the backfield clearly needs an injection of some playmaking at this point. And James Robinson could be that. He could just be, again, here today, gone tomorrow. Who knows on that side of things. But it is kind of cool to see a guy that, I mean, his high school was literally 10 minutes from my house. So it's been kind of cool to see him get a chance in Green Bay. Obviously, I've seen something else like that happen before. Dean Lowry was a Boylan Titan, which Boylan's not that far from my house either. And he had a relatively nice career here in Green Bay before signing in Minnesota. And it'll be cool to see how that goes. Just to see if, again, maybe he'll make an impact or anything like that. Mark, I'm happy that you understood the reference here. For those that don't understood the losing edge, it's a South Park episode. It's wonderful. No, I do not plan on fighting the Bat Dad this weekend. But boots on the ground. Again, I will be in Denver this weekend to watch our Green Bay Packers take on the Denver Broncos. And in a game that Jay said earlier, like I brought up earlier, it might be a telling game. And it might. Like if Green Bay loses, they're 2-4 with Minnesota, Los Angeles, and Pittsburgh as their next 3 games. Minnesota's not good, but if Green Bay loses this game, neither are they. And the Rams and the Steelers, I think, are both pretty safely better than the Packers at this point. One advantage being, I guess, that the Rams game is at Lambeau Field, but I'm not sure if that'll matter. And the reality is, for all the issues surrounding this team, I think the biggest one is on the offensive side of the ball. And I know if you just scrolled your Twitter timeline, the only thing that you would think is plaguing this Packers team is their defensive coordinator. And we're going to see now if this works. Brendan's given me a middle finger. No, it was a thumbs up.
Now it's middle fingers.
Now it's middle fingers. So Brendan can hear me. Brendan, welcome to the show. I have what's that sign from, or what's that scene from Ted? I'm just an idiot spewing nonsense. So I'm really not talking about much of anything, just kind of going through everything. I was explaining that I think that this week, Jay, I'm sorry, dude. I'm not going to try and butcher that last name, but Jay was bringing up earlier that he thinks this would be a telling game for the Packers. And I agree, because if they lose this game I don't care if it's on the road. I don't care if Denver hasn't played their best or that they played Kansas City tough or any. If they lose, Green Bay sucks. And the time of starting to discuss, I hate saying draft position and stuff like that, but what is the desired outcome of this season at some point now? Now it's even less so making the playoffs. I think coming into the year, we thought maybe they could be all the teams in the NFC North were on the same playing field. And I think it's pretty clear that they're not. The team in Detroit is the best one. And I think there's a gap before you get to whether it's Green Bay or Minnesota, and then another gap before you get to Chicago, who, by the way, congratulations to Chicago fans. The Justin Fields era is, in effect, over. If he's got to have hand surgery, I don't know if he starts another game for the Bears. So congratulations to the King of the North for playing all of 2.5 seasons and winning 0 division titles and 0 division games and that would be none. 0 playoff games and 0 games of significance on the hand. Quite the king. That would be a really low standard for the king, but that is what I am told. But Brendan, I've rambled for 8 minutes. Should we start the show now?
Yeah, I'll give you some relief. I'll give you a little bit of a break here. I was trying to come up with some sort of regicide joke talking about the King of the North and having his career end, but I couldn't come up with a good one. So thank you for welcoming me into the program. I apologize that my equipment wasn't working, my computer wasn't working, and the window right next to me is jammed open. So you might hear a car driving by at some point. My apologies in advance. Look, I agree with the statement. Like, if you lose back-to-back games to the Raiders, who are still bad. Do not let their 3-3 record confuse you. Do not let back-to-back wins confuse you. That is a bad team and a bad franchise. If you lose back-to-back to them and the Broncos, who are miserable with for the second year in a row, they are going to lead the NFL in bad vibes. They are going to be the worst vibes team of the league 2 years in a row. If you lose to those two teams back-to-back with a bye week, I don't really know what positivity do you still think can come out of season, or what positivity could you spin for this team right now? That's a hard question to answer because we don't know at that point yet. But like, realistically, going into this year, I can only speak for myself, but I can tell you, I thought this team linger around for the 7th the 7th seed in the NFC, like linger around for that last wild card. I didn't think they were going to be good enough to win the division. I didn't think this was going to be a game, but I did think at the very least, all right, they can mess around and they can be interesting into the end of December. Like we'll go into weeks 17 and 18 and there will be some real intrigue with this program. If you lose these 2 games, I don't really know that you can spin it that way, especially after the mirage we saw last year. It was, 4 wins in a row or 5 of 6. And oh man, playoffs are on the line. That team, I wanted them to get to the playoffs. I wish the Packers had gone to the playoffs last year. It's fun. And why are you rooting for a team if you don't actually hope they win and succeed at all? I'll never be a let's just tank guy. Team, that run was fraudulent at the end of last year. And I'm not embarrassed to say it. Like they got preposterous turnover luck for 4 weeks in a row. And the minute that fired, it was all gone. Like, yeah, the offense was still broken. The defense was still crappily coached and wasn't very good from front to back. Like it was what it was. And I don't know how you can look at this team this year if you go through this kind of start to the season and then say, well, this is different. It's the Arrested Development meme, right? Has tried this and it never, maybe it'll work for us. It's that whole meme in reality. Like what would give you any sort of realistic belief that there is some sort of goal for this team to reach? And I know that just sounded like a bunch of word salad too, but the point is you cannot lose this game and still feel like not a legitimate chance to be anything other than a test tube project this year, because you look at the games going forward after this one, Jacob, the Vikings are not very good, but those are competitive. It's going to be a divisional game. The Packers wouldn't be any good either going into that contest. Rams is going to be tough. Steelers is at least going to be tough, if not like the biggest challenge in the world, but that's going to be tough. Chargers, a tough team to beat. The Lions are clearly the best team in the division. You got to play the godforsaken Chiefs in December this year, man. Like if you can't even beat the dregs of the NFL, I just will have a hard time believing that there's going to be anything to pull from this positively. And be in the grand scheme of things, that's okay. Like, and that sounds crazy, but if it truly becomes nothing more than evaluation, like, okay, well, it's time to test. It is every man on the 53-man roster, 46 on game day, 48 on game day with elevations. Every single person is fighting for their job every week. Maybe there's something positive that can come from that. I will as a fan more than anything else. So I do hope they're able to get this game done and taken care of. And I agree with Jay. I think this is a telling game because if you lose to 2 of the worst teams in the NFL back-to-back weeks when we're not even halfway through the season, guess what? You are one of the worst teams in the NFL because you can't even beat the crappiness that's around you.
Well, let's think of it this way. If Green Bay loses on Sunday to Denver, we are 1 fourth quarter comeback away from this Packers team having 1 win on the season. And again, I've said this ever since we started talking about it. They aren't going to take away wins because it didn't look pretty. They aren't going to take away wins for any reason. You won, you earned it. It's hard to win in the NFL. But that was 3 really crappy quarters surrounded by 1 good one and kind of some fortune along the way. Like one of the touchdown drives was basically 2 Joe Flacco pass interference penalties all the way down the field. Like, if Green Bay can't beat Denver, the conversations we're going to start having sound an awful lot like some of the stuff you were just saying. You can't beat Denver. When's the next game you feel confident? Yep, Green Bay's winning. Because for years, we did it with Aaron Rodgers, right? When Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback, it was, yep, Green Bay's winning this game, and this game. There are no layups. This team has no layups. Denver against Green Bay should be a layup. Denver against Las Vegas in the past has been a layup. Primetime on the road against a shitty team. Layup. Green Bay lost and played like shit in the process. Like, take away, and I know you can't take plays away, but whatever. Take away Christian Watson's 77-yard play. They had 105 yards passing in an era where it is easier to throw the ball than ever. I don't care about young receivers. I don't care about young offense. I don't care about – you have to find a way to be more productive than that. The high on the season for passing yards for Green Bay is 256. Not bad. But some of the conversations surrounding Jordan Love and the passing offense in general from this fan base is sounding an awful lot like what Bear fans were saying about Justin Fields. Mm-hmm. And, oh no, It's not Jordan. Everything else around him is terrible. And there is some truth to that. A Hall of Fame left tackle has played one game, and his replacement is, surprise, not as good as him. Elton Jenkins missed. Yeah, big shocker there, right? Josh Myers, who's been average, is mostly that. John Runyon has taken a step backward. Zach Tom, I don't think, has played that well the last 2 weeks. And I know he's kind of one of those guys that we feel like has gotten into that stratosphere where we don't talk about him making mistakes anymore because we like him and he's good, so we forgive his mistakes. The conversations we're going to start having if Green Bay loses to Denver is, okay, can they beat Minnesota? I don't know. They're not beating the Rams or the Steelers. Those two teams are at least average, if nothing else. Then you said what? The Chargers? Chargers are definitely more talented than this Packers team. Whether or not Brandon Staley tries to give the game away is another conversation. So that could be 4 in a row. Detroit, not a chance in hell. Kansas City, nope. Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, and Patrick Mahomes at Lambeau Field against a bad Packers team, that ain't happening. And then it's the Giants. Like the next game you're thinking you could feel confident the Packers could win is against the New York Giants, and that's a road game on Monday Night Football. That's in December. It's 10 days before Christmas. It is absolutely unfathomable to think that, because what would that then be? Green Bay's lost 9 games in a row or 8 games in a row or something like that if we get to that point. That's a lot. That doesn't happen. Now, I do think Green Bay is going to win this week. So I said all that for basically nothing. But if we get to that point and looking down the road, now we're having conversations that I said I didn't think were possible anymore, but they are. And that is, could Love be one and done? Could LaFleur be on the hot seat? Could Gutekunst be on the hot seat? Because if you're 2-10, I'm sorry, the quarterback you have, who's not a rookie, is not the guy. And that is an indictment on everybody that helped make that decision. Now, long way to go. I'm not burying Jordan Love, but anybody pretending that they're more encouraged than discouraged through 5 weeks is lying to you. Now, he's got 12 games to figure out how to flip that script. Because after 2 games, I would have told you, yep, he's at least solid, if nothing else. The last 3 games have been pretty bad, save for the fourth quarter against the Saints. But I don't, like you said, I don't know how you feel good about anything if they lose to this Broncos team. This is the equivalent of if they had lost opening day to the Bears, because we know Chicago sucks, and we knew that going into the game. And most people that were actually paying attention to what's going on knew that going into that game. But Denver, like we're saying all these things about Chicago, and I know Denver beat them. Denver might be worse. That's the only win that Denver has this season.
So I agree with you. Like, Love has to be better. A whole offense has. The defense is frustrating, but they're also not giving up a ton of points. And Barry is what Barry is at this point. Like, I'm worried about the offense and the coaching at this point. And this actually came up on 580 Sports Talk on Tuesday. This is from Nate Tice over at The Athletic. I really enjoy Nate's work, both on their podcast and his written stuff. Through week 6, we have, in terms of quarterback play in the NFL, the lowest touchdown percentage, so that's touchdowns per pass attempt, in 15 years. The lowest yards per attempt for quarterbacks in the NFL in the last 15 years. The lowest yards per completion ever across the entire NFL. Net yards per attempt, the lowest in 18 years, under 6. 5.95 is the current net yards per attempt average across the league. Average quarterback rating for the entire league right now, 88.2. That's the 6 years. Sack percentage, and this plays into a different side that we're not necessarily getting into, but that's the highest it's been since 1998. I'm 4 years old during the 1998 season, and I'm not like crazy old, but I'm quite a lot older than 4 years at this point. So my point in bringing all of this up is, do you feel any different about what this offense has done so far? That we should whitewash it. I'm not sudden, let's forgive what Matt LaFleur has done wrong or what Jordan Love or the receivers or the line. Don't forgive it. But I am curious if knowing that offense around you is down, and frankly, I would just argue bad right now. We watched all the games on Sunday. Offense was putrid this week across the NFL. Does that make you feel any different in any direction about where the Packers are at the moment?
No, because
Okay.
you just mentioned they're bad, but they're towards the offense around the league is bad, and Green Bay's toward the bottom of bad. So it's, I mean, I'm not going to make the metaphors that you can off of that, but no, that doesn't make me feel any better. Like, I would be hoping that, and if you're talking about bad, you're talking about teams that are currently starting like Aiden O'Connell and Zach Wilson and some of the other like just the bums. Dorian Thompson-Robinson started a game, and I know Twitter loves him, but he stinks. He's a rookie, and he's played in the 5th round, and he got benched for whoever the hell that was on Sunday for the Broncos. PJ Walker.
Hey, show some respect to the XFL Houston Roughneck legend, please.
Okay, PJ Walker, who's an XFL legend, but not an NFL legend. None of those guys are like, again, and everybody who like yells at me for being critical of Jordan Love says, oh, you just expect him to be Aaron Rodgers. Well, no, because quarterbacks I've seen with my own 2 eyes that are better than Aaron Rodgers: Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. That is it. Oh, Peyton Manning, 3. That's it. That is it. Those 3. So asking Jordan Love to be the 3rd of 4 quarterbacks that are better than Aaron Rodgers, of course I'm not asking him of that. I'm asking, can they put together a back-to-back quarters of solid football? Because they haven't done that offensively since they played in Atlanta. Can they put together a whole game? Can they do something before they're down by 2 scores? Like, I saw the stat earlier this week about how, like, oh, well, Jordan Love's passer rating in the 3rd quarter is X, and the Packers have done this in the 3rd quarter. It's like, well, yeah, they've been down by 3 scores in 2 of the last 3 games going into the 3rd quarter. Sorry, not good enough. Simply not good enough. And I've said it about 1 billion times. You cannot, with the conversations we have to have about Jordan Love at the end of this season, which is pay him or don't. I don't think that's being understood well enough. Pay him or don't. Because we're not going to do the lame duck quarterback thing. With those conversations you have to have, you cannot grade Jordan Love on a curve, which is kind of what this conversation you're having right here is doing to a degree. You're like, well, he's a first-year starter. He's playing with a bunch of rookies, and like offense around the league sucks. Cool. I'm not asking him to be Patrick Mahomes. I'm asking him to be base level Kirk Cousins. I'm asking him to be base level Jimmy Garoppolo, or name your average game manager guy there. And again, I acknowledge no Aaron Jones. A.J. Dillon's been bad. Offensive line in front of him has struggled. I acknowledge all of those things. That does not excuse 3 interceptions, all of which were his fault. And you could tell me all this stuff about, yeah, I know Elton got beat. That's still a ball that once Love steps up, he should make to Christian Watson, or at least throw it to the back pylon. Didn't do that. He's thrown 6 interceptions in the last 3 games, and there's only one that you can argue was not his fault. And that was the second one against Detroit, where Dobbs moved, and then as Love was kind of going through there, they pretty much confirmed that was a miscommunication between the two. He's got to take better care of the ball. He's got to be more accurate. He's got to have the opportunities. He's got to take the opportunities when they're in front of him. It hasn't been enough for a guy who's a 4th-year player. And again, Jordan Love's not a rookie. And there are some rookie level mistakes that are being made the last couple of weeks. And again, there's no substitute for playing. He's got 12 weeks to make me sound like a jackass, which I completely acknowledge that too.
Look, I don't know.
You want to believe so bad. You want to believe so bad.
Well, yeah, I want to, but like, can you blame me? Like, I want
you're David,
to believe.
You are Fox Mulder from the X-Files. I want to believe.
Well, and here's the thing too. Like, you're right. Like, I'm not disputing any of this, and I'm just trying to come up with like what needs to happen to have proof, and at what point in the season. We've got a comment here in the YouTube feed from David, and appreciate all you guys who are watching along tonight. Who says, if week 13, if this team's out of it, it's time to give Clifford a chance. I respect David's opinion. I respect everybody's opinion. We are all entitled to have them.
I disagree completely too. There's no scenario where Sean Clifford is this team's quarterback of the future.
Dude, and again, totally fair. You have your opinion. I have mine. And I'm glad we can have an open exchange of ideas here. The free market is alive and well on the Pick Six. Absolutely not. I don't ever want to see Sean Clifford, bar injury or being 4 games up on the division with 1 week to go, playing as a starting quarterback for the
And
Green
really,
Bay
that's the
Packers.
only way that I want to see him is if they're up by a bunch of games, because if he's injured, I don't want that either.
Yeah, I do not want to see that. I want to believe. Of course I want to believe. Because why wouldn't I? Because I'm a fan, because I want this team to be good. And the most likely way in the near future for this team to be good and competitive and contending is for the guy they already have in the building to be a good quarterback. We have not seen enough in the first 5 weeks of the season for the Packers. We haven't. This needs to be turned around. And it's on everyone. It is not just on Jordan Love. We talked about it last week on the show. I know you've tweeted about it a couple of times back and forth. I think you and Dusty Evely were having a conversation about it, in fact, the other day on Twitter, Jacob, about like having a veteran around would have been nice for this year to help, like a steady presence. And I know Mercedes Lewis is the name that has come up a couple of times. Like, I know why the Packers didn't do it. You know why the Packers didn't do it. They wanted to go full youth, but like, can you imagine one adult in the room in the offensive playmaker group? Like how much that would help. So you're not asking Tucker Kraft, who is clearly not ready for prime time, to make plays where he needs to be ready for prime time. Or Luke
He's
Musgrave,
the worst player on the roster. If I rank players 1 through 53, Tucker Kraft is 53.
Yeah, and I liked the pick. I did.
Sure, same. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of intrigue there. And, you know, we went over during the preseason that young tight ends take a while, but like sometimes if you want to see what you can get out of your whole offense, you can't just rely on a bunch of dudes who are 25 and younger plus one older running back all the time. I mean, it's just not a great place to, you know, start from. And I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted reading in the comments here. I'm sorry to insult Sean Clifford, but again, if Sean Clifford ever starts with the Green Bay Packers, they're not going anywhere. I just am confident in that. I have seen enough. Sometimes, and this is a whole nother discussion we can get to, like if we get to week 13 and the Packers are out of it, we will have the discussion because I will demand that we have it, that maybe it's time to stop drafting athletes and it's time to start drafting football players. I think that is a very legitimate thing that this team needs to start considering because there are a lot of picks that have been spent on athletes in recent years. Rashawn Gary was that kind of pick when he was taken as early as he was. He is a freak. He is a tremendous player. So far has not worked out. The quarterback or a number of different receivers. Jamon Moore is somewhere out there. I don't even think he made it to an XFL roster this past year, a USFL roster. Like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you just got to draft dudes who can play ball. I would argue with the Sean Clifford point. He's not good enough to play ball at that level. But again, we'll move on from that. We don't need to worry about the backup quarterback. There's more problems with this offense than I gave them credit for. And part of me is saying, one, well, that's something that is working against Love and is a point toward, you know, let's pump the brakes a little bit on the criticism. But on the other hand, good quarterbacks make bad rosters look better. And so far, we have not seen that. And this right now is not a good enough roster. And maybe things turn around. Jordan Love's not the only. The line certainly can. Defense certainly can. We know that. A bunch of guys across the offense can certainly play better. You know, there's things Christian Watson can improve on. We're all excited about him, but there's things he needs to do better. Aaron Jones has been great, but he's only been on the field for like 8 snaps all year. I mean, there's things that need to be worked out by everyone. And if it all starts to click together and Love starts to look better, we're going to have a different discussion, you know, come a month from now. I bring up real quick, and I'm not sure if you got to this during your opening monologue while I was off in the wilderness trying to figure out how to plug things into a USB port. The running backs that you're signed to the practice squad, James Robinson, Rockford earlier today. I don't think this is, I saw a bunch of reactions about, oh, he's going to take all these snaps. And what does this mean about Aaron Jones? I don't think it means anything about Aaron Jones. I think this means Patrick Taylor sucks and Emmanuel Wilson not an NFL caliber player or rotation NFL caliber player. And they brought in a guy who at the very least has been a good rotational running back in the NFL before. And frankly, I think it's a no risk signing. The money doesn't matter at this point in the year. If he's competent, great. That your running back 3 has been elevated. That's nice because you want to get that guy snaps at least late in games or when you need to give Jones or Dillon a break. And if he's not any good, well, okay, neither is Patrick Taylor. Like you're fine. That's not anything that you're not losing ground anywhere. I had written down that I wanted to get to like position groups or players that have not lived up to the hype or haven't enough. so far this number one is the running backs, and that's not necessarily Aaron Jones's fault because he's been hurt, but Taylor's gotten way too many snaps. AJ Dillon has been bad, as you pointed out. Like, that to me is one of the major groups that needs to get fixed following the bye week, because if you want to marry the run and the pass, you know what you need to be able to do? Offensive line as well. But I mean, there's a lot of position groups you can point to, but I think at the very least, I can say the Packers clearly know their running backs room needs some help based on the move they made. Plus, not even that, they worked out Darrell Henderson too, who ended up signing with the Rams practice squad. So clearly this team knows that position group needs to get some work.
Tried to trade for Jonathan Taylor too.
Yeah, that's true.
Before the season even started, tried to trade for Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, I mean, I think I said this, I don't remember who it was with, but a week or so ago, the Green Bay running back room, especially without Jones, is the least explosive group in the NFL. And I say that without having done all of my research or anything like that. But AJ Dillon last week or however long ago, that was a good game, right? Well, it was 20 carries for 76 yards. Like, that's 3 yards a crack. Good for him. Nice-ish game, kind of, whatever. Still not very good. Emmanuel Wilson has like 3 carries on the year. We've talked about him a bunch. Patrick Taylor, we've talked about that. That's a guy that, if he's on your practice squad, cool, but he's not somebody that you're just like, okay, we got Patrick Taylor, we're good. Like, Green Bay needs to overhaul that position as soon as this offseason, because I love him. And Aaron Jones is like the poster child for why we don't live in absolutes of never, ever pay a running back, because Aaron Jones has lived up to that contract and more.
Agreed.
Probably still not the greatest practice to give them a boatload of money, but whatever. That's a different discussion for another day. But Aaron Jones this year, injured. Guys, as they get older with more of a workload, don't get less injured. So I strongly doubt that Green Bay is just going to start over at running back next year and say, yep, Dillon walks, Jones gets cut, and we have Emmanuel Wilson and James Robinson as our guys that are here, and we'll draft a couple guys. I don't think that'll happen, but I do think this is a position that needs to be overhauled, and that could mean, one pick somewhat early. That could be as early as one of their 2 second-round picks, and one guy late. It could mean 2 guys on day 3. It could mean 3 guys on day 3, like they did when they drafted Aaron Jones, and just see which one sticks. We'll see. This is a really good class for the draft in general. It's a really good class for running backs too. But that position group, I think, was the one when we came into the season. If everybody said, like, one of the first things I wrote about was 5 reasons to be optimistic for Green Bay. Well, one of the reasons that everyone would have had on their list was that backfield and that run game with AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones. And it's been MIA. Green Bay, I don't believe, has run for 100 yards in a game this season, which is crazy to think about. I can almost certainly guarantee that their running backs have not run, because if you take Jordan Love scrambles out of it, then that certainly plays a part. But I almost promise you that would be the case for just the running backs if you take away Love running the ball too. It's not great. And the answer to this question is no, because who's trading for AJ Dillon? Like, I know, like, some people just like to have, well, now some people like to just think, oh, addition by subtraction, we get rid of him, and like, cool, we got rid of him. Like, I really do. I just think that sometimes fans want someone's head on a stake, but like, getting a conditional 6th, AJ Dillon is worth more to the Packers than that conditional 6th round pick will be, because that's basically, unless he becomes a malcontent. If he becomes a guy who's pouting because he's not getting carries and then pissing and moaning in the locker room, but that just doesn't seem like the AJ Dillon
I wouldn't think so.
We've come to know over the last 4 years. So I can't, without thinking off the top of my head, that it's difficult to envision a position group that's played worse to start the season than the running backs, based on expectations, especially.
Can I add in one addendum to the passing or the statistics from the last couple of weeks? The Packers actually did rush for over 100 yards as a team against the Raiders this past week, or last week. They did. They got to 110 in the final box score. But
Jordan Love accounts for that, right?
Yeah, I can tell you right off the rip, Jordan Love accounted for 37 of those yards.
Yeah, so
76
of them were
accounted for 78.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, if you include sacks in team pass yardage, the Packers actually only had 98 passing yards if you take away the Watson bomb.
Bad.
Busted coverage.
Not great.
98. You cannot live like that in the NFL today. You absolutely cannot. And that is why this is so concerning and why this game, as you and everyone who's watching along on YouTube or Facebook tonight has mentioned the same thing, like why this is such a big game coming up on Sunday, because I don't want to say it's over, because I refuse to let myself believe that, because I'm, stupid, but also just because I'm a diehard emotional fan. Take a mirror if after a bye week and after getting embarrassed the week before, if you can't nut up and be ready for that game and win that game against a bad team, you're just all team, to circle back to what we were talking about a little while ago. Additionally, is there anyone else that stands out, like as a group that running back, duh. And I think you can easily point to a couple. The defensive line play has got to be better. The pass rush group, certainly setting the edge in general, no matter who it is. What other group stands out to you the most as this needs to be better at? Exceed if they're not, and I think that's the category the offensive line falls in, or there's too much talent to be this underperforming and this bad, which I really any group on the defense.
Yeah, I think your answer is definitely on the offensive line for that, because this team, I've made very clear what my philosophy is when it comes to football and how it works. And that works on both sides of the football. And it's you build the front and the rest will fall into place. And Green Bay's front felt like something that was put together pretty solid on the offensive side of the ball. I have my qualms about the way they've built it, but it's hard to argue with the success that they've had. The problem now is guys like Runyon and Josh Myers certainly need to play better. Rasheed Walker needs to play better. And this is an audition. I've said it before. This Packers team has 2 players on its roster right now that you could confidently pencil in as a starter in 2024. And I know my buddy Ross Uglum always likes to point out like what a functional offensive lineman looks like. And that's cool. But the aim for me is higher than functional. I'm looking for that. They don't hand out the Joe Moore Award in the NFL, but that's the type of offensive line I want to build. And Gutekunst has talked in the past about we want to build a big. He said it when they picked Josh Myers. Word for word was, we want to build a big, intimidating offensive line. Well, the Packers are currently neither of those things up front, and they're not even sound. Like, pass protection at this point. Packer fans love to share that Pro Football Focus stat about pass blocking. Overdone, and really mostly a byproduct, in my opinion, of one, having Bakhtiari and playing against the Bears the first week. And then Atlanta's pass rush just isn't anything special at this point, especially at that point in the year. They didn't have anything figured out on there. So, they've played Detroit. They've played 2 teams with a legitimate rusher. Detroit's got Aiden Hutchinson, and the Raiders have Max Crosby. Well, both guys wrecked the damn game. Both of them. And I understand everyone's like, oh, how do you not game plan against the one guy that they have? It's like, well, they did, but sometimes that dude is still just that dude. Green Bay has
That's why they're that dude, because they can beat those things.
Green Bay has a dude like that. His name's Rashawn Gary. Like, that's how that works, right? We've had that dude in the past. It was Clay Matthews. Before Clay, it was Reggie White. Like, Reggie's in his own category when it comes to these players. I'm not comparing these guys, of course, but if they don't block, then the easiest way to ruin a young quarterback is to get him hit. And Green Bay's been letting their guy get hit. Some of that's on Jordan Love. Rondé Barber talked about how there's a lack of decisiveness that he has. And that was one of the worries I had coming back with one of the worries I had with Love's first 2 games was when he looked decisive, there were still some throws into like some troublesome spots. So it was almost like predetermined before the snap even came that that's where I'm going with the ball. So it looks decisive, but like it is, but it should have been kind of thing. So we'll see if that's something that's gotten better over the last 14 days or so, but I really do. I think that's where it starts. The line of scrimmage wins the football game, and I don't make the rules. I just enforce them and watch them as they play out. And that's been the way for 100 years of football. And I know fantasy football and everybody like that loves that kind of shit, but it's the guys who don't get you fantasy points that win football games. And you can look at, last year's Super Bowl, Philadelphia got their powered by its two lines, and Kansas City beat them because they could block against them. And that was how. And if you want any further proof, look at Kansas City themselves. They have Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce with Patrick Mahomes. They can't block Shaq Barrett and JPP. And what do? They spend a buttload of money on offensive linemen the next season. So that's where it starts for Green Bay for me. Figure out who those five guys are and let them roll. If that means, I think Joe's got here Walker, Jenkins, Tom, Runyon, Nyman. Maybe that's good enough. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Is Josh Nyman any good? I don't know. Like the Packers think that Rasheed Walker's past him. So, and Rasheed hasn't exactly lit the world on fire since he's come in, but I don't know. I don't know where it starts. The problem is we don't have a ton of answers and there is no cavalry coming. The trade deadline, the Packers absolutely should not be trying to acquire anybody at that point. So,
yeah. No, I'm in agreement with you on that wholeheartedly. A couple quick notes. One, while we're talking about guys you had to game plan against, I noticed you glossed over 2006, 2007 Aaron Campman, 27.5 sacks in 2 years. That's fine, though. Everyone always disrespecting number 74. That's fine.
AK-74, baby.
Man, he was a stud. He was so freaking good for those couple of years. Here's an interesting thought. I'm going to get to the defense in a second, specifically up front, because you're right. I mean, I agree with every single word you said. I know it makes for great sports talk radio, by the way. Just say I agree with your co-host and that it's beautiful sports talk radio segment.
To be fair, that is the smartest you've ever sounded, is when you ever say you just agree.
I mean, that bar is beneath the earth's mantle. We have a comment from Jay here that I think is interesting because I like Zach Tom. I am pro Zach Tom. Yep. And Jay says, hot take, Tom might be a liability, may be able to play everywhere, but doesn't excel anywhere. I don't, and we've got another edition here from Jacob. Do you want to do the bit? It's our pal Mark.
It's not a bit. He invented the Oreo, and my lifetime supply of Oreos will be in my possession after I see him on Saturday.
Someday I'm going to ask where this bit comes from, but nonetheless,
he invented
Mark
the Oreo.
Adds, as a
That's where
counterpoint,
it came from.
I don't think Tom is a liability. I think he's playing hurt and had two very tough assignments the last 2 weeks. That said, maybe he shouldn't be a right tackle. Tie that back in. We got such smart listeners and watchers to the show. Try him at center. Like, we know what Josh Myers is. I think we have seen enough football with two different quarterbacks and with the same system from Josh Myers to know we are bumping against the ceiling with what we're going to get from 71. And is that unfortunate because the Chiefs took Creed Humphrey like 3 picks later or whatever? Yeah, obviously. It was
the very next pick.
Yeah, whatever it is. Like, yeah, that sucks, but whatever, move on. It happened. So guy on the left has no clue. Thank you. Here's the thing. That's really nice. Here's what I was going to say though about the line. Try Tom inside. Try putting Zach Tom at center. We know he can play there. He got some reps there during the training camp and preseason, right? Give it a try. What could possibly hurt from giving that a go? And maybe they're beyond Nyman. I don't know. I'm not in the room with Adam Stenavich and Luke Butkus and Matt LaFleur and the players. I don't know exactly what the situation is with Nyman. We heard Stenavich say some not so nice things about him that LaFleur then had to paper over the next day. Maybe the coaching staff is just done with him. And if that's the case, so be it. I don't make those decisions.
Can't take him off the field goal block team, though. That was hilarious.
Yeah, that's extremely funny. He's huge. He's got that. It's like when Brock Osweiler used to go in to block extra points. It's very funny.
Unfortunately, that right now might be one of the 5 highlights of the season. So hopefully that's something that changes here in the next 12 weeks or so.
So my point being, you got to try something to get this mixed up. And this coaching staff is stubborn largely, which means maybe we're never going to get to that point. But I do believe that we should at least try. The team, the Packers, the coaching staff should try something else because you've got to figure out something, some way to get a push in the run game, some way to get more time for Jordan Love when he's dropping back and trying all these tight window passes. I just saw this tweeted out. I think it was Wendell Ferreira who put it on Twitter just now. Love is among the NFL leaders at quarterback in tight window throws this year. Is that his own fault? Is that the coaching staff? It's not even fault, but is that because of him? Is that because that's how he's coached? I don't know. But if you're going to make tough throws, it'd be nice to not have to make them while there's a dude right in your lap. So find some way on the offensive line to get this figured out. The only other thing I wanted to tack on here about the defense, just so we can touch on the defensive front. We have gone over how many times, Jacob, that the Packers not being able to stop the run is the crux of all of this. The run fits are bad. The play up front just isn't good enough on an individual level. Devontae Wyatt's name has come up as a player who has wowed some folks, and in some ways he has taken a big step forward in getting pressure from the interior, and that is a
pass rusher. That is it.
Exactly. He he can't defend the run. He has not shown to this point that he can reliably or at all defend against the run. And that is a problem. So you've got to find a solution for that. I'm not holding my breath because I know who is coordinating and coaching on that side of the ball, but you've got to be able to find some way to get off the field more often. You have to. We talk about how great the secondary is, and Jair Alexander and Rasul Douglas, who has legitimately had a very good start to the season so far. The safeties are concerning, but it makes their job easy if they don't have to cover as long and they get easier assignments. They get help over the top in obvious passing situations, etc. It's not the other team is converting or, is in 3rd and 1 all the time. It's just not going to end up making a difference. I don't know what the solution is. I'm not a coach. I'm not paid to be a coach. So it's the best I can offer for you. But you've got to find a way to stop the run somehow. You've been over before, and we talked about this at length, I think the last 2 shows as well, that there's just something is wrong philosophically with this team in the sense that they do not set the edge. Nobody can. And guys who once were able to have gotten worse in that department. So what are you going to do when you are tested? When I hate to sound like this much of a meathead, when your manhood is, what are you going to do to prove that you belong with the draft pedigree and all the adulation from the outside? You're going to do to prove you deserve that. So far, there hasn't been nearly enough of that, and I don't think any of those guys deserve it, save for maybe Kenny Clark, who I do feel like is having a resurgent season.
Yeah, he's been one of their best players, which is really frustrating when you consider everything else that has happened then around him as a result. But I think that Justice Mosqueda pointed out during the Monday night game, the Raiders ran some iteration of the end around 4 or 5 times.
Yep.
Like the plan was to attack the edges of Green Bay's run defense, and that extends out to the corners. One of the positives I thought of putting Keyshawn Nixon in the nickel was that he's a bigger body and a little more physical in that run game. Well, that has been somewhat helpful, but Jair Alexander, complete minus in the run game. And that's okay if he's going to be a positive in the passing game, obviously, but it doesn't help. Rashawn Gary was a good run defender when he came out of college. Not anymore. Devontae Wyatt, you mentioned all those pressures and all that stuff, and that's great. I think that Wyatt, the pressure is great. He's probably their worst run defender other than Kingsley and Agbury. Like, it's been bad. It's just bad. Like, the next time an Agbury stays disciplined on a reverse will be the first one. So whatever. That's kind of the case on that. Overall, if you had just read your Twitter timeline and know nothing about how the Packers have gone, you would assume the only problem on this team is Joe Barry. And I mean, I get it to some degree. Preston Smith covering Devontae Adams. Again, I don't understand how stuff like that continues to happen. And even when they ask, they just kind of arrogantly smile and say, well, shit happens. Like, there's got to be a better answer than that one. There just does. And that being said, defense has been relatively solid is the way I would say it. The games against Atlanta and Detroit were obviously embarrassing, but they gave up 17 points to the Raiders, 3 of which were gifted to them by a terrible interception from the quarterback. Like, defense has been good, solid, good, whatever, I'm not going to say they're great. I'm not going to say they're an elite unit. I'm not going to say they're even playing to their potential because they're not. But defense has played well enough for them to win in every game except for really one, because Detroit is the only game where it was like over from the jump. Atlanta, I think they played well enough for the offense to try and put the game away, but they didn't. And then that being said, you still can't let Atlanta, who only wants to run the football, to run for 200 yards. Like, I think that's a failure on both fronts. But if the offense can get a first down, then you feel pretty good about that performance in general. Just say, hey, we survived Bijan Robinson. And that's the way it's going to be. But I don't know. I don't know where this defense is going to go from here. I could tell you, if you had to ask me which unit am I more confident in, it's the defense by a lot. And that's just because of what we've seen over the last 3 weeks. Right now, I can tell you that the defense, if they get to 3rd and long, gets off the field. They sacked Jimmy Garoppolo 3 times on 3rd downs last week. That was nice to see. They get pressure on the opposing quarterbacks. The secondary play has been relatively sound for the most part again. The offense, I don't know what they do well. I really don't.
I mean, nothing. Like we can be blunt about that. Like for the first few weeks of the season, it was extending drives on third down. I mean, that's the reason I think a lot of his advanced numbers were so high those first few weeks, is he was doing an incredible job on the late downs.
And that was just never going to be sustainable. That's the other part. Like,
no, not at all. And I mean, the answer is nothing. Like, I don't think that's like overly harsh. I mean, they can't run. I was just looking right a moment ago, ESPN's pass rush, run stuff, pass block, run block, win rate. Where do you think the Packers rank in run block win rate this year?
31st.
See, a little pessimistic. Look how much happier we can be. They're only 29th in run block.
Okay.
So yeah, only fourth worst in the entire NFL instead of second worst. See, we're already being more optimistic about this. It's bleak for the offense right now, but everything feels better after a win, right? You win on Sunday afternoon. Suddenly, this is a 3-3 team. 3-3 feels a whole lot better than 2-4 as we get into a harder schedule coming up. So, as it pertains to this game against the Broncos, we've already talked about how big, how important, how much of a turning point game this could be. You also said you're picking the Packers to win this one. So, after talking about how the defense has been the best unit up right now, and at the same time, I don't think anyone would confuse them with like the Browns or the 49ers as a great defensive unit. The offense, we have agreed, is not good at anything at the moment. So why are you taking the Packers to beat Broncos?
Because Denver's historically awful on defense. So it's like out sucking. The stoppable force meets the completely movable object. And that is where I think Green Bay's at this week. Aaron Jones coming back. He can create plays on his own. Jordan Love has at least shown some ability to make a play here or there. Russell Wilson will throw them to you. And I think that's something that definitely matters, is if you can win that turnover battle. But this is two bad football teams facing off right now. And again, they have time to change that. But as of right now, I don't know how you say anything different other than this is a bad football team. And that's what Green Bay is. But Denver is worse. And they were down, 28 rip against Chicago, 28-7 against Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was awful. And they are that close, that much of a comeback away from being over to start the season. And we're talking about, you probably still are kind of talking about them drafting Caleb Williams or Drake May or somebody like that. Like, there's already discussions about this full-scale teardown of Denver's roster, which is kind of funny because it doesn't really go together, because they can't really get rid of Russell Wilson unless they're just going to eat that contract. And Sean Payton, I'm sure, didn't sign up for a full-blown rebuild. So, most overrated coach in NFL history, by the way. I just think Denver sucks. I think that's really what it boils down to. And who the hell knows? Like, it's Tuesday as we sit here. Who knows who's still even there? Like, we got all this conversation. Packer fans who want Jerry Jeudy and everything like that. He had 3 catches for 14 yards on Thursday night against the Chiefs. Yep. Like, that's a draft pedigree thing, and nothing.
A 13-yard catch. Let's not forget that. 3 catches for 14 yards, and one of them was a 13-yarder.
Yeah, that's a draft pedigree thing. I have no desire to trade for Jerry Jeudy unless he's going to play for free, or you can essentially get him for free, but you're going to have to pay him because he's under contract. So, you know, the Packers are in no shape to be making any moves for players to help them for this season. Like, they're just not.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
The 4 picks that they are slated to have in the top 100 are far more valuable than a splashy trade that'll make you feel better and give you vibes. Well, I've never seen vibes win a football game. I think that's just a load of crap for everybody to kind of go, wow, Chicago Cubs legend Kyle Schwarber just hit another home run, Brendan. How does that make you feel?
Well, happy that in 2016, the Chicago Cubs won the World Series.
I say now that we've got vibes in the dumps, but that didn't exactly.
He's always a good vibe, even though he had like even 0 WAR for the year or whatever it ended up being. I'll always love Kyle Schwarber.
When you're hitting home runs on top of the damn scoreboard, I don't care what your wins above replacement
is.
Show me a guy who can do that. Nonetheless,
to the point about the Broncos here, and we were, talking about dudes and having like game-changing kind of players. One, that's why I would hope that the Packers aren't in the market for a guy like a Jerry Jeudy or someone of that caliber. Like, what does that actually do for you? Like, who is it? Bill Barnwell, who I really like Bill Barnwell, and I'm sure he was just trying to come up with content, but the Packers trade Romeo Doubs in a second to get Jerry Jeudy in a fourth. Get out of my face, man. Like, that's such a terrible idea to even put on ESPN.com. Like, if you're going to make a move for someone at the deadline, I firmly believe this for any team, you got to get someone who's going to be a game-changing kind of piece. That's Jerry Jeudy is absolutely not that. And I rather just stick with the guys that are out there already and let them go through the growing pains and the growing process than worry about adding in a malcontent from another team. Now, that being said, speaking of game-changing dudes, by my count, the at least on their defensive side of the ball, have precisely one. And that is Patrick Surtain. Patrick Surtain is a stud.
How dare you? Justin Simmons works.
He's
very
Justin
good.
Simmons is still a good player. I mean, he'd be the best safety the Packers have, but like this is also not 2018 Justin Simmons anymore.
That's fair.
He is better than average replacement level safety, but I don't think he is as good as he was at one point. Okay, but even if you include him in that group, who's the next best player on that defense? Nick Bonito? Zach Allen? Is Kareem Jackson? Headhunter Kareem Jackson? Like, is that the next best player on this defense?
Because they suck. They don't have like this whole thing about who's going to block guys. Like they cut Frank Clark and they cut Randy Gregory. Like I don't even know who their pass rushers are gone.
Yeah.
So like it's not like they've got dudes up there that you're like, oh, we got to worry about that. Like Green Bay should be able to, at minimum, establish Aaron Jones enough and block these dudes to where Jordan Love is essentially playing 7-on-7. Should, but
yeah. I mean,
I should be a billionaire too. So
yes, there's lots of shoulds that come with this game, though. I mean, I'll take the Packers to win here too. I'm not worried about home field advantage or anything like that in a game like this. I mean, these are two teams that are essentially at this point. Russell Wilson may be fighting for his career to a degree. I'm not trying to go overly hyperbolic with it here, but this is just not a good defensive unit. I know there are issues with our own defense that, you have to, it is what it is. We've covered all we need to cover about them.
Why do you think Russell Wilson is so weird? That's what I want to know. Why is Russell Wilson so weird, and why do we think that is?
Great question. In fact, I think it's kind of like because he's told the story before about how he was a bully growing up, right? Like he was a bad dude when he was like in high school or college or whatever, maybe even before that. I have always thought his thing is an act, and part of me never cared. Like when he was in Seattle and people used to get on his ass all the time about, oh, he's going to the children's hospital. This is so fake. Like he's doing it all for show. Well, I mean, yeah, but also like it made those kids' days probably, which is more meaningful than him being an egomaniac. Like I don't care to that degree, but it is very clear, like his whole adult existence is trying to build up the Russell Wilson brand, which is really odd because he's not like Tom Brady doing that with TB12 because Tom Brady won 7 Super Bowls. Like Russell Wilson had 1 and he was the passing game for Seattle that year was the 4th most important part of that team after their secondary defensive front and running game. Yeah. Like he got carried to that Super Bowl. So he's bizarre. I'm sure there are still some Wisconsin fans out there who love him and would love to like trade for him. But
I wonder what is your take on that? So like he was there in Wisconsin for 1 year, but like, so
1 year.
So for example, this to me is ridiculous. You've got guys like Albert Breer who claim Joe Burrow as a Buckeye, even though he never played 1 snap for Ohio State. So like that to me is just ridiculous. No, he's not a Buckeye. You don't get to claim him. But Russell Wilson, what was his thing from A Whole Pack of Badgers, which was actually kind of funny when he was still somewhat likable.
Right.
Russ, like the rest, I don't know. Like, is there a way to claim him, or do like both teams get to claim him? How does that work in your brain? I think Brendan's frozen, so that's good. Well,
it's kind of basis. Sorry about that. Look, I was gonna be blunt. Not my finest show. Everything's fucking breaking. I got sound problems over here. The internet's
Now
shitting
go
out on me.
subscribe
It's,
to
you know,
Brendan's OnlyFans page so he can afford to get out of this van down by the river that he lives in currently. Please.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Anyway, I generally think that the team that you let, I would follow the way they do it at the draft and in the NFL, that where are you announced from? Like when you walk across the stage, when Roger Goodell or whoever else reads your name off a card, where do they announce that you're from? And that is where you belong. Like claiming Joe Burrow as a Buckeye is ridiculous. And I know Burrow is, you know, tried to keep up appearances and he's from Ohio and he plays there now and saying that, oh, well, you know, that's where I graduated from, etc. Joe Burrow is an LSU Tiger and everybody knows that he is an LSU Tiger. Give me a break on that. But that's also very like Ohio State fan to the core.
To be fair, I was gonna say, is there a more entitled fan base across sports than the one that tried to trademark the most basic word of the human language?
I look, I did not go to a Big Ten school, but I did grow up in Big Ten country. I grew up following Big Ten sports religiously and a fan of a Big Ten program. In fairness, I've never liked Michigan either, so I don't know that I'm going to get on your good side by
you could have
saying
left that
either,
part out. But
listen, when you root for a team that's always at the bottom of the Big Ten, you grow to dislike teams that are at the top all the time. Just to be
so
frank.
you must have been an Illini guy.
Yeah, I was a gigantic Illini fan. Juice Williams.
I was going to say Juice in the Rose Bowl. Yeah, that's the only team I can remember being any good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Rose Bowl itself sucked, but they went to the Rose Bowl and it was sick. My parents met at the University of Illinois. They got engaged on the quad at the University of Illinois. Like
conceived you at
well, no, that was Earth's biggest mistake several years later. 17 years later, I guess, technically. But yeah, I loved Illinois as a kid. Illinois was my first like beloved college team. Then it was South Carolina because my sister went there and they got good because it was right when Steve Spurrier started.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to the worst Power 5 football school in the country while I was in school. And now they're competitive. But I've had Illinois, South Carolina, and Kansas, frankly, is a very loser group of college football teams to root for. But it is the bet I've made for myself. And now at least Kansas is competitive. So we're not Michigan, but I'll take it.
And Kansas is basketball, like the face of college basketball at the moment. So.
Yeah, that's nice. That's so winning literally a national championship 2 years ago has made things much easier on all fronts.
Yeah, and they're competitive every year, right? Like I've always wondered. Michigan's never really competed for a title in the last. Well, I know they made the playoff last year, but like consistently or whatever for the last 15 years or so. But I've always wondered what it's like to root for a team that you know has no hope. Like I've got friends that went to Iowa State and they are religious Cyclone fans. It's like, it's just never going to happen, man. It really isn't. Like, I don't know what to tell you. College football is not built on an even playing field. Like it's just never going to happen. A highlight for you. This is why I say this before too. And it's kind of where, you know, I got people that are friends that are fans of like Alabama and be like, oh, you guys have never won a title. It's like, well, no, but like there's more to I think there's more important things to college football than just saying, oh, you either won a championship or you didn't. Like that's not quite how this should work, in my opinion. But we are way, 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 way off topic and subject. But I was curious on that point there. So
we're getting too close to draft talk here. I think subconsciously
that's where the
we're
next
toward
turn
draft
goes,
talk.
right?
All right, real quick, give me a final score prediction before Sunday's game.
20-17 Packers.
That score's too normal. Packers 26, Broncos 23. That's what I'll go with. I'm only going to predict
Packers scoring 26 points.
Keyshawn Nixon kickoff return touchdown is going to be included.
Okay. Man, that's going to be tough because with the altitude, you figure they should be able to boom the ball out, but maybe not. Maybe they want to give the Packers a chance to get a penalty that backs them up inside the 10 because they're good at that. That is something the Packers are good at. Special teams penalties, 10 through the first 5 games.
I will say this. You and I are in a win-win situation because if the Packers start winning, obviously there's lots to talk about because the team is competitive and winning. And if the Packers do not start winning and are terrible the rest of the way, there is also so much to talk about. Like, is Rich Bisaccia actually good? Are any of the coaches actually good? Are any of the players actually good? So, you know, as the hardest working men in America, podcasters, we are in a pretty nice position right now with this Green Bay Packers team. Obviously, we'll be watching along. Hope you guys will watch along with us. You can check out Jacob's work, Packers Central at SI.com, working with Bill Huber, doing incredible stuff covering the Packers. I am a nobody, as someone has let me know all night long in the YouTube comments. I'm a total nobody, but if you want, you can find me on Twitter at BrendanDZW, same place on Blue Sky, and you can also check me out 580 WIBW AM in Topeka, Monday through Friday on 580 Sports Talk. Jacob, enjoy the game. Are you making the road trip out? You've been at every game, every road trip lately. I just figure you kind of travel with the team at this point.
I don't travel with the team, but I will be in Denver on Friday afternoon.
Look at that. I saw tweets about a Packer tailgate. I imagine you're the guest of honor.
I don't know about all that, but I was invited. We'll see if I'm able to get to that tailgate. I have duty calls. My priority number one is always work when I'm afforded a privilege such as this one.
This is Colorado. Did you say duty or doobie calls?
Duty with a T.
Okay. I mean, it's Denver.
It is Denver. It is Denver, but still illegal in terms of the NFL. So would never support such a heinous act.
Of course. All right. Enjoy Packers Broncos. Well, we hope we are all able to enjoy Packers Broncos coming up on Sunday. We'll recap it all. Look ahead to week 7 as well. Week 8, coming up next Tuesday on the Pick 6. For Jacob Westendorf, I'm Brendan Brzezinski. We will talk to you guys coming up next week, hopefully following the Packers' 3rd win of the year. Until then, enjoy Packer football.